All right, we are back here on the Just End the Suffering podcast, getting ready for your fantasy football drafts. I got a couple coming up next week. Very excited to continue fantasy football week here. Joining me today, a fantasy football guy for MC Sports Edge, Kyle Dvorchak is here. Kyle, how are you?
I'm doing well. I love Just End the Suffering. That's such a good name.
Yeah, well, I mean, I root for a bunch of the bad New York teams, so I'm used to suffering.
Yeah, you should just root for the good ones. Although you don't have a good football one right now. Just root for the Yankees. Just only root for the Yankees.
Well, I've been a Met fan since I was a kid, so I'm actually getting enjoyment this year for once.
I know. I don't follow baseball too much, but it seems like the Mets are good.
Yeah, the Mets are doing well so far. We'll see if it lasts till October, but I'm glad you got here. And for people watching the video version, Kyle is a big contributor to this MC Sports Edge Fantasy Football magazine. I am reading it, do my research, and a lot of good stuff in here. Help you get ready for your drafts.
Yeah, I'm very proud of how that turned out. Not just myself, tons of people way smarter than me pitched in a ton of work into it. Team previews, positional previews, all of our rankings, so many articles. So definitely check that out. Yeah, I'm just very happy with how it turned out. Not because I'm on it, to be clear. I think I did fine work, but I really just think our team is really good. Me withstanding.
Yeah, it's a very talented team that puts the magazine together here. And since I have you on, I want to ask you directly here. Like, you've obviously done plenty of fantasy drafts all your time, and obviously this year is different with all the player movement we had in the offseason and guys going different places. What do you think, in your opinion, is the biggest key to having a successful draft this year?
That's a good one. I think it depends where you're drafting. Like I've been doing a lot of best ball drafts. I think gauging the receiver market is really important because we've just gone full like complete galaxy brain. Like you can never take a running back in rounds 3 through 6 or whatever. So I think gauging how the market is moving versus previous years, like last year, people were taking Mike Davis in the 4th round. I can't believe like what came over society that we chose to do that. And I think this year there's no true like landmines. Josh Jacobs ADP falls as soon as he goes out and gets like whatever third quarter Hall of Fame game reps. Antonio Gibson plays on a special teams or whatever and runs with the third team. And I was either the offensive coordinator or the running backs coach says like his fumbling is becoming an issue. I think it was Scott Turner who said this, and his ADP falls. So I think the market is reacting better. So I think gauging like where, like at what point when players are falling, when people are making quote smart decisions, are they maybe overthinking it, right? Because Gibson's still a good player. Josh Jacobs should still lead the team in carry. So trying to figure out where the market movements are maybe overcorrecting or undercorrecting, because people are good at football. Like in 2015, like I was pretty, it's been a long time since 2015. I was like in high school then, I think. It seems like it might have been a beatable game, a pretty beatable game back in the day, but people are smart now. So I think gauging how the market moves is such a important way to draft, especially as we look from like people drafting their first best ball draft in May versus you doing your home league in, September, the first week of September or whatever. It's going to be just such drastic movements.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like I love your strategy. Basically, just play the board and see what happens. Opposed, I feel like people are trying to guys me. Oh, zero running back strategy, or I have to go running back first and second. I feel like for me, it's very simple. It's like, what does the board give me where I'm sitting here and what I feel like the best value is? I don't overthink it. I feel like you do that, you really get cute, and then you end up messing your team up.
Yeah, I have some. I just drafted a bunch of zero RB teams on Underdog because I actually felt good about, not good. I felt as good as you can about, man, like if Antonio Gibson is really going to fall that far, and if Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery, I don't like those players. I do not take those players that often, but you're getting a lot of workload so late in the draft that I'm like, yeah, I will hammer receivers early, not because like I am a diehard zero RB stand. I do think it's a good strategy, but because I think the board, and I was generally right, that the board would give me overcorrections on these running backs in like deep into the draft. So it was, I did get into a zero RB team, but it's like you said, it's because it's what the board gave me, or at least I predicted it to give me. And that's about how it played out.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, let's start out here. Let's say you're the lucky guy. You're number one on the board in the draft here. Is it anybody you're taking other than Jonathan Taylor?
Oh, it's Christian McCaffrey. The answer is Christian McCaffrey. Like if you, I can't predict injuries, right? And when you look at what Christian McCaffrey did in the last time we saw him fully healthy, it was, I believe, if it was not the best fantasy season ever, it was like the second or third best fantasy season ever. Jonathan Taylor last year was really, really good at running the football. He had like the 21st best fantasy season ever. He was very good. It's just that fantasy, half PPR, full PPR, as long as you're not playing standard, is not designed to account for, I think it was the third ever thousand season that Christian McCaffrey gave us. Was it three seasons ago now? So it's been a hot minute. But we saw them whenever he was healthy in the past 2 years. They do the same thing. They immediately say Christian McCaffrey gets 8 targets and like 20 carries. And Jonathan Taylor just doesn't get that. So I will gamble on McCaffrey, who's still like 25 years old and was extremely durable through college and then into the NFL for like 3 seasons. I'll gamble on that guy because when he is healthy, he boat races everyone. No one will touch him. It's just so clear that, I mean, he's literally one of the best fantasy players to ever grace the game.
Yeah, so basically your opinion is basically like that Jonathan Taylor is the safe play at one, but you want the big home runs when you're taking McCaffrey.
Yeah, I think you are. If I had to bet on who plays more games, I'd take a small bet on Jonathan Taylor. Like, it does seem like, injuries are hard to predict, but guys who have gotten injured more in the past probably get injured more in the future. But that is that is like such a slight coin flip. And the scoring difference, the actual on-field scoring difference between McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor is not a coin flip. Jonathan Taylor is good. He's really good. He's probably a better pure runner than McCaffrey, maybe than anyone else in the NFL. We're playing the fantasy game, right? We want the dude who can go 1,000 because that is so valuable, assuming you're playing in anything other than standard, half PPR. McCaffrey just boat races everyone in the league. So if for some reason you said like, I just need someone who plays 17 games or whatever, sure, I guess I'd bet on Jonathan Taylor over most of the running backs, right? But that's not what I want. I want the dude who scores the most points, and more often McCaffrey scores the most points.
Yeah, absolutely here. So let's say obviously my league, at least my league example here's 12-team league, half PPR. Like in the drafts here, where do you think is the worst slot to be picking in round one? Where would you like hate to be, like kind of make the most difficult choices?
I hate pick 7, 7, 8, 9, unless someone makes a mistake. Because I think there's a very clear top 5/6. It's the top 3 receivers, McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, and Austin Eckler. And I think there's a bit of a gap there. It's not huge. It's fine. I don't think there's like a broken spot where like you're starting really behind the 8 ball. But assuming everyone drafts well through the first 6 picks, I feel like there's a little tier break at 7. So I'd 7, 8, 9. I'm like, what is the point of drafting here? Give me 11, 12, or give me top 5 or 6.
It makes sense. And speaking of 11, 12, I have one guy in my league who always seems to end up on the turn, regardless of like how we do the draft mechanism. Like he always seems to end up there. Like if he's picking there again at 11, 12 on the turn, how would you play that this year?
I'd kill to get Travis Kelce there this year. And I do every now and then. I feel like his ADP is like 10, 11. It depends on what site you're playing on, though. But I take him if he gets to me at the turn, which I've gotten a bunch of turn picks recently. Very unfortunate. I've gotten some turn picks recently, and if he makes there, I take him every time. There's just so many outcomes where Travis Kelce, who has been the number 1, 2, or 3 tight end for each of like the past 5 years, and now has the weakest target competition we've seen in the Patrick Mahomes era. There's so many outcomes where he sets like every record for tight end. So I usually take him there. And then I'm pretty ambivalent on what I do with the other spot. I like CeeDee Lamb there. If Stephon Diggs makes it, he usually doesn't, but if he makes it to the turn, even Devontae Adams or like Najee Harris, that one I just kind of take whoever's at the top of ADP.
Yeah, it makes some sense to me. And let's start with the running back, obviously the traditional fantasy position here. And obviously you're picking the top draft, you know who you're taking here, but like beyond that top tier, who are some guys you like this year in terms of fantasy wise?
The market has also been really getting into Saquon Barkley, but that's, to me, Saquon Barkley's really good, but it's disgusting. I hate to say it. I like the Giants offense based on their prices. I don't like the Giants offense, but I do think that they are going to get one of the most massive coaching turnarounds we've seen in terms of how it affects their offense in the past few years. The Jags are actually going to kind of get the same because Urban Meyer is so incredibly bad. God, how did that guy get hired? So I think the Giants philosophically will get one of the best turnarounds. So I think Daniel Jones turns his game around. I think having a better coach helps. I think having a coach who we saw was in some sense instrumental in turning around Josh Allen from being probably a bust, like on track to be a bust, to incredible. I think he deserves some credit. I think Josh Allen deserves more of the credit because he controls his own destiny to that degree. But the scheme was great for Josh Allen, and the coaching definitely helped Josh Allen cut out the mistakes. And that's kind of the Daniel Jones trajectory, is a player who is lost after a few years, but has the physical assets needed to be a productive NFL quarterback. And that rising tide is going to bring up all the boats, specifically Saquon Barkley, who, whenever he is healthy, it's the McCaffrey argument, right? I get it. Saquon Barkley has been, another one, two lost seasons, basically, a season and a half lost. And injuries are just hard to predict. We see this every single year. McCaffrey was the example, right? Supremely healthy, then it just goes away. So I'm not going to ride too hard on calling Saquon Barkley injury prone. Sure, more than other players, maybe. I think that's possible. But to me, his volume is like, honestly, I'd be comfortable taking him at the 1-2 turn, like taking him 201, 202 if I had to. Right now, depending on what site you're on, I know in like high stakes leagues, that's basically where he's at. But I think in your home league, the home leagues love to tell you like, oh, no way, this guy could never play. Burned me last year, could never play a full 17 game season. But we say that about players all the time. So Saquon Barkley is someone that, depending on your site, I could have him ranked a little above ADP to just drastically above ADP.
Gotcha. That makes some sense here. In terms of receivers here, how do you look to play this? He's obviously assuming like we're with the half PPR model. I feel like a lot of leagues are doing that now in terms of like, are you looking more for the guys who are the clear number ones? You can tend to build like a bunch of like solid options with good quarterbacks in there. Like he is looking for the pure target hogs.
Yeah, I would generally just say like we want to bet on the things that are sticky, and players who get targets are sticky. Like that's just what they do. It's a skill you have in the NFL, and it's not something you can really lose. Whereas like I think Deontay Johnson is kind of my example of this. I don't want to be betting on the Pittsburgh offense. The line is not great. They made some, I'd call them half-hearted efforts to improve the line in the offseason with weak free agent signings. And it looks like their quarterback plays, if you want to call it that. Again, they almost feel half-hearted. It was not a great draft for quarterback, to their credit. I'm not sure how those are working out. Training camp would say they're not going great. But Deontay Johnson has demonstrated time and time again an incredible skill to get a ton of targets. The offensive efficiency, it could go up losing Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger was very old and not particularly good at throwing anymore. It could go down because the quarterbacks could be dreadful. They could be that, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence. That will be very fluky. And I don't have a strong conviction on which way it goes. I have a strong conviction that Deontay Johnson gets open and catches the ball. And that's something that it will repeat itself year over year. So I do generally favor my projection for players' targets. And for like specific players, the 2-3 turn where you can get like AJ Brown, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, who fit that bill and are on at least, yeah, they're pretty much, I'd say they're all on good offenses. Maybe run heavy, but good is kind of the caveat, but they're all on competent to very good offenses. I love picking at that spot right there. So the anywhere from like 1 through 5 where you get to toe that AJ Brown, Michael Pittman, T. Higgins range. If you start from the 1 through 5, I think that's why I want to be like top 3, top 5. Not only can you get McCaffrey, but I love that 2-3 spot to get 2 wide receiver ones.
Yeah, so basically your strategy is like you rather have the guy you feel confident rather than throw a dart on which guy the Kansas City offense could be the Patrick Mahomes' favorite receiver of the week.
I'm throwing those darts too, but I don't have strong conviction in those darts. I'm taking a lot of like I like Sky Moore the most, but I've totally been talked into going Juju. I've been talked into going MVS. I have a lot of all of them because someone will emerge. I have no fear that like Alec Pierce is going to unseat Michael Pittman or whatever. So I don't have a ton of any individual Kansas City receiver. I have a bunch of the whole spur. Well, I'm not taking Nico Hartman. I have confidence that guy's not good, but I have a bunch of the rest of the 3. No strong conviction. Sky Moore is my favorite if you press me, but I truly get all of them. Whereas like for AJ Brown versus Devonta Smith Smith's a good player. I'm taking AJ Brown so much because I'm confident he should be able to out target Devonta Smith.
Absolutely. I'll go to the quarterbacks too here because obviously most of these leagues not taking quarterback very high. I'm not sure there's gonna be the guy in the league who reaches for Josh Allen like the 2nd or 3rd round here. Like, where do you want to start taking a quarterback in your opinion this year? And like, who are some guys that you feel like are not getting valued enough in that position?
Yeah, I think in your home league, I think in like, best ball or different like super flex, obviously the context is a bit different, but just in your home league, in my home league, I have mostly been skipping out on the top tier of quarterback because I think you can get comparable enough play and the opportunity cost of the 3rd round Josh Allen pick is high enough that Russell Wilson, Trey Lance are 2 players who've just been hammering. And Trey Lance is the perfect home league quarterback. He's not accurate. He can't throw. Dude, I don't care if he doesn't complete a single pass this year. He is so likely to rush for like 800 plus yards. When you project him out using last year's stats, it's a small sample, so it's going to look great, obviously. But like his scramble rate and his design run rate, he looks like a 1,200 yard rusher. Like he looks like an elite running back. You throw in like 2,000 passing yards. 2,000 would be a terrible passing season. You just throw in a few thousand passing yards and he's like instantly a top 5 quarterback. So it is so hard to do projections for someone like Trey Lance because his numbers are never going to look like the numbers of anyone other than like peak Lamar Jackson. And do you want to project him for that? I watched him. It kind of looks right in terms of his usage. Stylistically, he's not quite like Lamar Jackson, but his like raw stat lines are going to look similar. So to me, Trey Lance is like the ideal home league play because he'll like people will be thinking about taking him as like QB 12, 13 or whatever. I'll take him as like QB 8. I will take him rounds ahead of ADP. And I love Russell Wilson too. I just think in an offense that isn't so archaic, he has such a high ceiling.
I think that's kind of the spot that like Jalen Hurts is going last year. He was going like QB 12, QB 13.
Exactly. Yes.
And like I feel like he's gonna go overdraft here because they got so many weapons in there this year in terms of like people expect much more at him, and he might put up similar numbers, and people might be disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. I love Jalen Hurts, and like in best ball, Trey Lance's ADP is so steamed up that he goes basically where Hurts goes. They go similarly, but in your home league, like take the next Trey Lance. The next Trey Lance is just staring us in the face.
Yeah, that's for sure here. I was also there with the tight end position because I feel like last year going into the draft, it felt like there was a big three of, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and I forget who the third guy was last year, but there was like, I feel like the big three. I feel like the position did tend out like to expand a bit last year. You had more competent options. I feel like that's definitely helpful for fantasy players. That position is very hard to fill most of the time.
Yeah, I have my best ball tiers ranked as it's so difficult. I really think it's a tier 1 and it's just Travis Kelce, and a tier 2 and it's the next 4 guys. I think in my best ball tiers, I gave credit, a decent amount of credit to Pitts, and I gave credit to the market, really, saying Mark Andrews is relatively close to Travis Kelce, within like a round and a half or something like that. And even the same with Kyle Pitts. So I grouped them in a tier, and then I grouped Kittle and Waller in a second tier of their own. So I have 2 tiers consisting of just 5 players. And after that, the tiers get big. And I think I've actually been pretty comfortable going with any one of the top tier other than Mark Andrews, because I think he's too close to Kelce. I think the gap should be wider, or the gap between him and Pitts should be smaller. So he's the one I think is a little overpriced. I've been fine going with that first, I call it 2 tiers. You call it 1 tier, you call it 3 tiers. I don't care. First 5, I think is fine. And the numbers have generally shown that we actually predict pretty well who the elite of the elite tight ends are. Like we've consistently picked out Waller and Kittle as elite tight ends. And when they're healthy, they are. Last year, both of them ended up being a little banged up. But when they're healthy, they are. Travis Kelce is like always healthy and has consistently been the best. And this data, goes back to Gronk too, where every year Gronk was just the best. And we kind of knew that. We knew the guys who had high target shares, high efficiency, were year in, year out, and you could just keep churning on him. Now we have like Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts in that group, essentially. Those guys are easy to predict. It's the next tier where the guy who scored 9 touchdowns last season, or the guy who, like Logan Thomas, kind of like stumbled his way into a wide receiver 2 role. Those guys, the tier 2, I am far less confident in. So I'm not getting much like Dalton Schultz, TJ Hawkinson. If I'm getting into that group, just give me like Albert O later in the draft, or like David and Joe way later in the draft. Tyler Higbee plays every snap on one of the best offenses in the league, maybe the best offense. He doesn't do a ton with his snaps, but still, he plays literally every snap for that team. So if I'm not getting a top 5 guy, I'm not getting a top 12 guy. I'm going 13, 14, 15 deeper.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I feel like I love that strategy in terms of the top guys. I was like, if I can get like one of the guys and give me wide receiver 1 production, I'm gonna do it. But like, I'm not gonna try and dabble in that middle class where I could just go late. Maybe like guy I'm watching in that front in terms of like getting big headlines of Jet Can. Tyler Conklin, that could be a guy you can get very late, could be a breakout candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's and we see this every single year that you don't like. I talked about you don't want this year, you don't want last year's Jalen Hurts, you want this year's Jalen Hurts. The same thing. You don't want like last year's, well, it'd be 2 years ago now, Logan Thomas. You want the next guy, because those guys end up being overpriced based on their past production when they're not like special players. Like Logan Thomas, very impressed that he was able to transition from a quarterback to like a very high-end starting tight end in the NFL, but I don't think he's a particularly special player at the position. So I don't want to be buying into that when I can get a guy who's probably just as talented as he is in like Tyler Higbee, or even deeper, like go to like Mo Alley Cox or like Brevin Jordan. If I'm taking those guys, I'm taking like 2 to 3 of them, and I'm probably cutting probably 2 of them by like week 2, right? I've seen, they're not playing the snaps I thought they were. Let me cut them and probably churn the wire. Maybe one of them hits one of the 3. But yeah, I love going either high, low, nowhere in the middle.
Yeah, in terms of sleepers, obviously everybody has their sleepers here. Who are some sleepers you're looking at this year in terms of guys that you're trying to make sure you get on your teams?
I have like just an insane amount of Albert Okuibunam. If he doesn't work out, I'm going into hiding. I'm doing the Dan Snyder thing where I just casually purchase a like $100 million yacht and go to a foreign country, so you can't question me about my decisions. And for me, that would be Albert O, because I have him like I every time I look at a draft, I'm like, why would I not take Albert O here? He was a very above average college producer, especially dating back to like his freshman year. He was like an 18-year-old who scored like a dozen touchdowns against SEC competition. He's been super efficient in the NFL, and he worked his way as a rookie and second year tight end onto the field, was the first round good tight end ahead of him on the field. So to me, it's just like all signs point to him being like, I don't want to say an elite tight end, but definitely an above average starting NFL tight end. And now he plays with Russell Wilson. So to me, Albert O, tight end position is one I just can't get away from.
Yeah, the other positions you have sleepers that you're very excited about?
The receivers, there's some really good, like deep sleeper receivers. They all kind of fit the same bill of like small-ish playmaker, someone who can control a surprising amount of target share. I think like a good trio right now is Isaiah McKenzie, Wandale Robinson, and David Bell. David Bell just like returned to practice a week ago, and I don't think he'll go drafted in many home drafts. Maybe someone you just monitor on the wire, but his college production was just elite. Like he has that like Corey Davisian type of profile where he just kept turning out like 1,000-yard productive seasons all throughout his career. Tyler Boyd's actually, I think, the perfect comp for him. Like big-ish slot receiver, not particularly athletic. Tyler Boyd like bombed the combine. But then you look back at his college data and you're like, he looks like a player who should be productive. David Bell has that like same profile. He's like Keenan Allen light if he hits his ceiling. Like that's what I think his ceiling is. And there's not a ton. It's just Amari Cooper standing in his way from getting a decent amount of targets. The depth on that team at receiver is pretty weak, and it profiles as like outside burners as Donovan Peoples-Jones and Anthony Schwartz. So I think there's a starting role pretty much on the table for him. All he has to do is just finish out training camp strong.
Absolutely. Last question here is obviously we talk about the sleepers. You gotta go the other way too here. Look, trying to avoid those busts here. There are guys that you are just making sure not to draft, like you don't want anywhere near your team.
I don't have like any Joe Mixon on my teams. He's like the master of none, like jack of all trades, master of none. He doesn't play a ton of third downs. He still catches some passes, but he's not the elite runner either. Like he's not that Nick Chubb caliber runner. He's not, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry. And at that point, like I would rather shoot for the moon with like Aaron Jones, who he probably also has a similar ish role, but he could trade away 50 or 100 carries for like 50 catches on Joe Mixon. He could catch an insane amount of passes. So I'd rather shoot for the moon with something like that, whereas Joe Mixon feels like the high floor. He's the starting 2.5-ish down running back for a very good offense, but I just don't feel threatened by his ceiling. He has to score like 20 touchdowns to reach his ceiling. He scored a lot of touchdowns last year, but that's like the fluky part of any player's game, essentially. Some players score more touchdowns than other, but I would say him repeating what he did last year would be a surprise to me.
Absolutely, Kyle. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. Before I let you go, I'll give you a follow social media and keep up with your coverage for NBC Sports.
Yeah, follow me at Kyle Tweets here on Twitter. If you want to read anything I dropped, just check it out there. I think like an hour ago, at the time we were recording this, I dropped an article about the ceiling case for the Seahawks, or the Seahawks, God, not the Seahawks, for Russell Wilson and the Broncos. The ceiling case for the Seahawks is like they make it through the season and we don't like kick them out of the league because they're so bad. Ceiling case for Russell Wilson and the Broncos. So you can check that out if you want to read something of mine.
Absolutely. And once again, fantastic Twitter handle, Kyle Tweets here. I love it.